The first time I found a handwritten note on my desk at the radio station, I made the mistake of reading it. The request was simple. Play Moonlight Serenade at exactly 3:33 a.m. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash, thinking some prankster from the day shift had left it behind. But when I turned back to my equipment, the note was smoothed out flat on my desk again, and my hands were trembling. That was 3 months ago, and I have not worked a single shift since then without wondering what would have happened if I had played that song. My name is Oliver, and I am 24 years old. I work the graveyard shift at KVRN 104.7 FM, a radio station buried in the hills outside of Millbrook, Pennsylvania. Most people have never heard of our station unless they have driven through the winding back roads past midnight, searching for anything to keep them awake. We broadcast old songs, take call-in requests, and provide company for insomniacs, long-haul truckers, and night shift workers scattered across 3 counties. The pay is barely enough to cover my rent, but the isolation suits me. At least it did before I learned about the rules. I want to say something before I go any further. If you are listening to this story, if you have made it this far, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. I am not telling you this for attention. I am telling you because you need to know what is out there, what is listening, and what happens when you break the rules. And if you have ever worked a night shift alone, if you have ever felt like something was watching you in the dark, leave a comment below. Tell me I am not the only one. Tell me you have felt it too. Because what I am about to share with you changed everything I thought I knew about reality. And I need to know that someone out there understands. The station itself is older than anyone wants to admit. It squats on a hill surrounded by pine trees, connected to the main road by a gravel path that turns to mud when it rains. The building is a relic from the 1960s, all warped wood paneling and flickering fluorescent lights that hum too loud in the silence. During the day, it is staffed by 2 DJs, a station manager named Mr. Calloway, and a part-time intern who barely shows up. But after midnight, it is just me. Just Oliver, or as the listeners know me, Vinyl. That is my on-air name. Mr. Calloway insisted on it during my first week. He said it gave me an identity, something for the audience to latch onto. He also said it was safer that way, though he did not explain what he meant. I did not ask. I needed the job. I had just moved to Millbrook after dropping out of college in Pittsburgh, and my savings were running dry. The night shift at a forgotten radio station was not my dream job, but it paid the bills and kept me away from questions about my future. My first night was unremarkable. I arrived at 11:45 p.m., unlocked the front door with the key Mr. Calloway had given me, and made my way down the narrow hallway to the broadcast booth. The booth is small, just enough room for the mixing board, a microphone, 2 monitors, and a worn office chair that squeaks every time I move. There is a single window that looks out into the hallway, and beyond that, the darkened offices and storage rooms that make up the rest of the building. The walls are covered in foam padding to dampen sound, and the air always smells faintly of dust and old coffee. I did my first broadcast at midnight. I introduced myself as Vinyl, played a few songs from the pre-programmed playlist, and took a couple of call-in requests. Nothing strange, nothing out of the ordinary. By 3 a.m. I was starting to relax. By 4 a.m. I was convinced this job would be easy. The callers were polite, the equipment worked smoothly, and the night passed in a comfortable blur of classic rock and jazz standards. I even started to enjoy the solitude, the feeling of being the only voice in the darkness for miles around. Then, on my second night, Mr. Calloway handed me a laminated sheet of paper. "Read this," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "Memorize it, follow it. Do not deviate." I looked down at the paper. At the top, in bold letters, it said night shift rules. Below that were 6 rules, typed neatly in black ink. Rule 1. Never respond to a caller if they know your real name, only your on-air alias. Rule 2. If you hear footsteps in the hallway after 2 a.m., stay in the booth. No one else is scheduled to be in the building. Rule 3. If a caller requests a song that is not in our database, play static for exactly 30 seconds, then disconnect. Rule 4. When the emergency broadcast tone plays on its own, remain silent and do not touch any equipment until it stops. Rule 5. If the phone rings during a song, let it ring until the song ends. Never answer mid-track. Rule 6. Do not read any request written on paper that you find inside the booth. Burn them immediately in the metal trash can. I stared at the rules for a long moment, then looked up at Mr. Calloway. He was a thin man in his late 50s with graying hair and deep circles under his eyes. He looked like he had not slept in weeks. His hands trembled slightly as he set a metal trash can next to my desk, and I noticed burn marks along its interior edges. "Is this a joke?" I asked. "No," he said. "It is not. Then what is this about?" He did not answer right away. He just looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Pity maybe, or regret. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Just follow the rules, Oliver," he said quietly. "If you do that, you will be fine. And if I do not?" He turned and walked toward the door. Before he left, he paused and glanced back at me. In the dim light of the hallway, his face looked hollow, haunted. "Then you will find out why the last 3 people who had your job quit without giving notice. One of them left in the middle of his shift. Just walked out and never came back. We found his car in the parking lot 3 days later. Key still in the ignition. He was never seen again. The door clicked shut behind him and I was alone. I will admit I did not take the rules seriously at first. I thought it was some kind of hazing ritual, a way to mess with the new guy. But I kept the laminated sheet taped to the wall next to my monitor just in case. And for the first 2 weeks, nothing happened. I followed the rules without really thinking about them, and my shifts passed uneventfully. The calls were normal. The music played without interruption. The hallway stayed empty and silent, but I should have known it would not last. Then, on my 15th night, I broke Rule 5. It was just after 1 a.m. I was playing an old jazz track, something smooth and slow, when the phone rang. The sound cut through the quiet booth like a knife. Normally I would wait until the song ended, but I was bored, and I figured answering a little early would not hurt. The song still had 90 seconds left, but I was tired and the call light was blinking insistently. I picked up the receiver and pressed it to my ear. "KVRN 104.7, you are on the air with Vinyl," I said. "What can I play for you tonight?" There was silence on the other end. Not the kind of silence where someone is thinking or about to speak. This was different. It was thick, oppressive, like the air before a thunderstorm. I could hear something faint in the background, a sound like wind moving through a tunnel or maybe breathing, deep and rhythmic. "Hello?" I said. "You there?" Still nothing. I was about to hang up when I heard it, a voice, distant and distorted, like it was being filtered through layers of static and interference. It sounded wrong, like multiple voices speaking in unison, slightly out of sync with each other. "You answered too soon." My blood went cold. The temperature in the booth seemed to drop 10 degrees in an instant. I could see my breath misting in the air. The voice was not angry. It was not threatening. It was just disappointed, like a teacher catching a student cheating on a test, like something ancient and patient that had been waiting for this exact moment. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice cracking. "You know the rules, Vinyl," the voice said, and I realized with horror that it was mimicking the way Mr. Calloway spoke. "You broke them, and now we can find you." The line went dead. I sat there for a long moment staring at the phone. My heart was pounding in my chest and my palms were slick with sweat. The jazz song was still playing, winding down to its final notes. I told myself it was just a prank caller, someone messing with me. But deep down I knew that was not true. The voice had known. It had known exactly what I had done wrong. The rest of the night passed without incident, but I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I glanced at the window looking out into the hallway, I half expected to see someone standing there staring back at me. But there was never anyone. Just darkness, just the faint reflection of my own frightened face in the glass. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I grabbed my things and practically ran out of the building. The morning sun had just begun to paint the sky pink and orange, and I had never been so grateful to see daylight. I did not tell Mr. Calloway what had happened. I did not tell anyone. I just went home, locked my door, and tried to forget about it. But the next night, when I returned to the station, there was a new note on my desk. It was written in the same handwriting as the first one, the one I had crumpled up and thrown away. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, like something from a century ago. The paper felt strange too, brittle and yellowed as if it had been sitting in an attic for decades. "You should have waited." My hands shook as I crumpled it up. I opened the metal trash can and pulled out the lighter Mr. Calloway had left there. The paper caught fire instantly, burning with a strange blue-green flame that smelled like copper and ozone. I watched it until there was nothing left but ash, then scattered the ashes in the can. But even after it was gone, I could still see the words burned into my vision, like an afterimage from staring at the sun. After that, I followed the rules religiously. I did not answer the phone mid-track. I did not respond to callers who used my real name. I stayed in the booth when I heard footsteps in the hallway, even though every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. I burned every note I found without reading past the first word, and the footsteps came often. The first time I heard them was on my 20th night. It was 2:37 a.m. and I was playing a request for a caller who wanted to hear "Dream a Little Dream of Me." The song had just started when I heard it. The soft, rhythmic tap of footsteps coming from somewhere down the hallway. I froze. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, like someone taking their time. They grew louder as they approached the booth, and I could hear the faint creak of the old floorboards beneath them. Each step seemed to echo in the silence, perfectly timed, almost methodical. Step, creak, step, creak. I glanced at the laminated sheet taped to the wall. Rule 2. If you hear footsteps in the hallway after 2 a.m., stay in the booth. No one else is scheduled to be in the building. I stayed in the booth. The footsteps stopped right outside the window. I could see the hallway through the glass, but there was no one there. Just empty darkness. The overhead lights in the hallway had been on when I arrived, but now they were off. I could not remember hearing them click off, but I could feel it. I could feel something standing just beyond my line of sight, watching me through the glass, waiting. I did not move. I did not breathe. I just sat there staring at the window, waiting. My reflection stared back at me, pale and terrified. Behind me, the song played on, Ella Fitzgerald's voice filling the booth with warmth that I could not feel. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps started again. They moved away from the booth, down the hallway, and eventually faded into silence. But just before they disappeared completely, I heard something else. A sound like fingernails scraping against the glass of the window. Slow, deliberate, 3 times. I did not leave the booth until my shift ended. When I finally opened the door at 6 a.m., I checked the window. There were no marks on the glass, but the hallway lights were back on, and I could not explain how or when that had happened. The calls started getting stranger after that. Most of the time, they were normal. People requesting songs, asking me to give shout-outs to their friends, or just wanting someone to talk to. I started to recognize some of the regulars. There was Janet, a nurse who worked nights at the hospital in the next town over. There was Ray, a trucker who always requested Willie Nelson. There was Sandra, an elderly woman who said my show helped her sleep. But every now and then, I would get a call that made my skin crawl, like the woman who called at 3:12 a.m. and asked me to play a song called The Endless Waltz. Her voice was sweet, almost musical, and she hummed a melody I did not recognize while she waited for my response. I checked the database. We did not have it. I had never even heard of it. I followed Rule 3. I played static for exactly 30 seconds, then disconnected. But before the line went dead, I heard her laugh. It was a soft lilting sound like wind chimes in a breeze. And then, just as the call ended, she whispered something I could barely hear. Soon, Oliver. Very soon. She had used my real name. Or the man who called at 4:47 a.m. and did not say anything. He just breathed into the phone, slow and steady, for 2 full minutes. I could hear wetness in each breath, like he was breathing through water. I hung up, but the breathing continued. It was not coming from the phone anymore. It was coming from the hallway. I looked at the window. Nothing, just darkness. But the breathing went on for another 5 minutes, steady and rhythmic, before it finally stopped. I learned not to question it. I learned to follow the rules, no matter how strange or terrifying things became. Because the alternative was worse. I found that out the hard way. It was my 30th night at the station. I had just finished playing a request when the emergency broadcast tone started playing on its own. It was loud, piercing, the kind of sound that makes your teeth ache and your bones vibrate. The monitor showed no indication that the tone had been triggered. No alerts, no warnings. It just started, splitting the silence of the booth like a scream. I followed Rule 4. I remained silent and did not touch any equipment. The tone lasted for exactly 1 minute. I counted every second. watching the clock on the wall tick forward while that horrible sound drilled into my skull. When it stopped, the silence that followed was deafening. My ears rang. My head throbbed. Then I heard it. A voice coming through the speakers. It was not a recording. It was not a caller. It was something else. Something that should not have been able to access our equipment. Oliver. My real name. I felt my stomach drop. Ice flooded my veins, Oliver, the voice said again. It was calm, almost soothing, like a parent calling their child in for dinner. But underneath that calm was something else. Something hungry. Something that had been waiting in the dark for a very long time. Why do you hide from us? I did not respond. Rule 1. Never respond to a caller if they know your real name. We know you are there, the voice continued. We have been watching you, listening to you, waiting for you. Every night you sit in that little box of light and sound and you think you are safe, but you are not. You are in our world now. You have been since the moment you read that first note. I gripped the edge of my desk, my knuckles turning white. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. You broke the rules, Oliver. You answered too soon. You read the note. You let us in, and now the door is open. Now we can reach you. The lights in the booth flickered once, twice, 3 times. Each time they went out, the darkness seemed to press closer, like something solid and alive. But it is not too late, the voice said, and I could hear a smile in those words, a terrible, knowing smile. You can still make this right. All you have to do is open the door. Come out into the hallway, come to us. We will show you such wonders, Oliver. We will show you what lives in the spaces between the frequencies, what whispers in the static, what waits in the silence. I looked at the door to the booth. It was closed, locked. I had made sure of that when I arrived, just like I did every night. But as I stared at it, I saw the handle begin to turn. Slowly, deliberately, click, click, click. I did not move. I did not breathe. I just watched as the handle turned all the way and the door creaked open. The hinges screamed, a sound like metal tearing, even though I had oiled them just last week. There was nothing on the other side. Just darkness. But it was not the darkness of an unlit hallway. This was different. This was absolute. Complete. A darkness so deep that it seemed to swallow light itself. Come with us, Oliver, the voice said. And now it was not coming from the speakers anymore. It was coming from the doorway. From that impossible darkness. We have been waiting so long. So very long. And you are perfect. You are young and alone and afraid, and your fear tastes like honey on our tongues. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I stayed in my chair, frozen with fear, as the darkness in the doorway began to move. It was not a shadow. It was something alive. Something that had no shape, no form. Just an endless, writhing void that seemed to pull at the edges of reality itself. I could see things moving in that darkness. Shapes that were almost human but not quite. Faces that were too long, too thin, with eyes that reflected light that was not there. And they were reaching for me. Long, impossibly thin fingers stretched out from the void, grasping, clutching at the air. The temperature in the booth dropped to freezing. Frost began to form on the equipment, on the windows, on my skin. Come, the voice whispered. And it was everywhere now, inside my head, inside my chest, inside my bones. Come to us, Oliver. Come home. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The door slammed shut with a bang so loud I thought the glass would shatter. The lights stopped flickering. The voice fell silent. The temperature returned to normal. I sat there in the dark, shaking until the sun came up. I did not move from my chair. I did not touch the equipment. I just sat and stared at that door, terrified it would open again. When my shift ended and the morning DJ arrived, he found me like that. Frozen, silent. He asked if I was okay, but I could not answer. I just grabbed my things and walked out. When I told Mr. Calloway what had happened, he just nodded. He did not seem surprised. He did not seem concerned. He just handed me a cup of coffee and told me to take the next night off. You did good, he said. You followed the rules. That is all that matters. What was that thing? I asked, my voice hoarse from hours of silence. He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. He walked to the window and stared out at the pine trees surrounding the station. Something old, he said. Something that has been here longer than this station. Longer than this town. Maybe longer than this country. It lives in the space between frequencies, in the silence between words, in the static that fills the dead air, and it is always listening. Why does not anyone shut this place down? I asked. Why do we keep broadcasting? He turned back to me, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. Because it needs a voice, he said. It needs a way to reach out, to touch our world. And if we do not give it one here, contained and controlled by the rules, it will find another way to be heard. Trust me, Oliver. You do not want that. The last time a station went dark in this region, 7 people disappeared in one night, just vanished from their homes. We found one of them 3 weeks later wandering the highway 50 miles away. She could not speak, could not eat, just stood there staring at nothing until she died. The doctor said her brain had just stopped, like someone had reached in and turned off the lights. He paused, his hands trembling as he sipped his coffee. So we broadcast. We follow the rules. We keep it contained, and we survive. How long have you been doing this? I asked. 23 years, he said. I was the night DJ before I became manager. I have seen things you could not imagine. I have heard voices that should not exist. I have watched good people break under the weight of what happens here, and I have learned that the only way to survive is to follow the rules. Every single one. Every single night. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and I could feel how cold his fingers were. You are doing well, Oliver. Better than most. The last person who had your job only lasted 6 weeks. The one before that made it 2 months. But you have the discipline, the focus. Just keep following the rules and you will be fine. And whatever you do, do not try to understand it. Do not try to figure out what it wants or why it is here. Just do your job, follow the rules, and go home when your shift ends. I took his advice. I took the night off. I slept for 14 hours straight, and when I woke up, I seriously considered quitting. I could find another job, move to another town, leave Millbrook and KVRN behind forever, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the money. Maybe it was the fact that I had nowhere else to go. Or maybe it was something else. Something darker. A part of me that needed to know. That needed to understand what was happening in that station, what was listening from the other side. So I went back, and the nights continued. I followed the rules. I burned the notes. I stayed in the booth when I heard footsteps. I did not answer the phone mid-track, and every night I felt it watching me, waiting for me to slip up, waiting for me to break the rules just one more time. But I did not. On my 40th night, something different happened. I was playing a request for Ray, the trucker, when I noticed something strange on the monitor. There was a new folder in the music database. I had not seen it before. It was labeled Restricted. I clicked on it. Inside were dozens of songs I had never heard of. Songs with titles like The Whisper in the Wire, and Voices from the Void, and The Last Broadcast. Each one had a note attached. Do not play. But there was one file that caught my attention. It was called Moonlight Serenade, the same song from the note I had found on my first night. My hand hovered over the mouse. I knew I should not click it. I knew I should leave it alone. But curiosity got the better of me. I double-clicked the file. A message appeared on the screen. Are you sure you want to play this? This action cannot be undone. I moved the cursor to cancel, but before I could click it, the phone rang. I looked at the clock. 3:33 a.m. I let it ring until the song on air finished, following Rule 5. When I finally picked up, there was that familiar silence on the other end. That thick, oppressive quiet that made my skin crawl. Then a voice spoke. It was different from the others. This one was clear, human, almost kind. Do not play that song, Vinyl. It was Mr. Calloway. How are you calling me? I asked. I thought you went home hours ago. I am not calling you, he said, and his voice was filled with sadness. This is a recording. If you are hearing this, it means you found the restricted files. It means you are curious. It means you are considering breaking the rules. I swallowed hard. Listen to me very carefully. The recording continued. Those songs are not music. They are keys. They are doorways. If you play them, you will open something that cannot be closed. You will invite something into our world that should never be here. The rules exist for a reason, Oliver. They are not suggestions. They are not guidelines. They are the only thing standing between us and something so ancient and terrible that it has no name. There was a long pause. If you play that song, I cannot help you. No one can. So I am asking you, begging you to close that file. Delete it if you can. and never look at it again, the line went dead. I stared at the monitor. The message was still there, waiting for my response. My hand trembled as I moved the mouse. I clicked cancel. The file disappeared. The entire restricted folder vanished from the database like it had never existed at all. But I knew it was still there. Somewhere in the system. Waiting. The rest of the night passed quietly. Too quietly, no calls, no footsteps, no strange voices. Just the music and the silence and the feeling of being watched. When my shift ended, I found Mr. Calloway waiting for me in the parking lot. He was leaning against my car, smoking a cigarette. He never smoked. "You made the right choice," he said. "How did you know?" "I always know," he said. "The station tells me. It shows me everything that happens here. Every decision, every mistake, every moment of weakness." He took a long drag from his cigarette and exhaled slowly. "You are stronger than I thought, Oliver. Most people would have clicked yes. Most people cannot resist. But you did. And that is why you are going to survive this job. That is why you are going to be okay. What would have happened if I had played it?" He looked at me with those tired, haunted eyes. "You would have opened a door that has been sealed for 60 years. You would have let something through. Something that feeds on sound and fear and loneliness. Something that takes people and does not give them back. And it would have started with you." He flicked the cigarette to the ground and crushed it under his heel. "Go home, Oliver. Get some rest. And keep following the rules. I have been working at KVRN for 3 months now. I follow the rules. I burn the notes without reading them. I stay in the booth when I hear footsteps. I do not answer the phone mid-track. I do not play songs from restricted files, and every night I feel it watching me, waiting for me to slip up. But I will not, because I know what happens if I do. Last week I got a call at 4:15 a.m. It was Janet, the nurse. She sounded tired but happy. "Hey, Vinyl," she said. "Can you play What a Wonderful World for me? It has been a rough shift and I could use something beautiful." I smiled. "You got it, Janet. This one is for you." I played the song, and for those few minutes the booth felt almost normal, almost safe. The music filled the space, warm and comforting, and I allowed myself to forget about the rules and the darkness and the things that waited in the hallway. But when the song ended, I looked at the window, and there, pressed against the glass, was a handprint. Small, childlike, made of frost. It had not been there before. I stared at it for a long moment, then watched as it slowly faded away. And I knew deep in my bones that this was not over, that it would never be over, that as long as I worked here, as long as I sat in this booth and spoke into this microphone and followed these rules, I would be dancing on the edge of something vast and terrible. But I also knew I could not leave. Because if I did, someone else would take my place. Someone else would sit in this booth and learn the rules and make the same mistakes I almost made. And maybe they would not be as lucky. Maybe they would not resist. Maybe they would open the door, so I stay. I follow the rules. I keep the door closed, and I hope every single night that it is enough. If you are ever driving through Millbrook, Pennsylvania, late at night, and you happen to tune in to 104.7 FM, do me a favor. Do not call in unless you really need to. Do not ask for songs we do not have. And whatever you do not use my real name, because out here after midnight, names have power. Rules have meaning. And some things should never be spoken aloud. My name is Vinyl, and I will be here every night from midnight until 6 a.m., playing the songs you request and keeping the darkness at bay. One rule at a time. The handprint on the glass haunted me for days, not because it was there. I had grown accustomed to strange occurrences at KVRN, but because of what it represented. A child's handprint. Something innocent twisted into something wrong. I started keeping a journal, not of everything that happened, but of patterns. Times when the footsteps were loudest. Frequencies where the static seemed to carry voices. Callers who used phrases that felt scripted, rehearsed, like they were reading from something I could not see. It was on my 47th night that I discovered I was not the only one keeping records. I had arrived early, around 11:30 p.m., and decided to explore the storage room at the end of the hallway. I had walked past it dozens of times but never gone inside. The door was always closed, and something about it made me uneasy. But that night, curiosity overrode caution. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was larger than I expected, filled with old equipment, boxes of records, and filing cabinets coated in dust. Everything smelled of mildew and decay, like something had been rotting in there for years. I pulled the string hanging from the ceiling, and a bare bulb flickered to life, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. That was when I saw the notebooks. They were stacked on a metal shelf in the corner, dozens of them, each one labeled with a name and a date range. I pulled one down at random. The name on the cover read, Marcus Webb, March 2019 to May 2019. I flipped it open. The pages were filled, with handwriting that became increasingly erratic as I turned them. Marcus had been documenting his experiences just like I was. He wrote about the footsteps, about the calls, about the notes he found and burned. But towards the end, his entries became frantic, desperate. May 3rd. It knows my schedule. It knows when I arrive and when I leave. I heard it say my daughter's name tonight, my daughter's name. How does it know about her? How does it know anything about my life outside this place? May 7th. Found another note. This one had my home address on it. Burned it. Burned it. Burned it. But I can still see the numbers. I can still see my street name written in that horrible handwriting. May 11th. Called in sick tonight. Can't go back. Can't face it again. But I can hear it even here. In my apartment. In the static between radio stations. In the hum of the refrigerator. It followed me home. The entries stopped there. I checked the date. May 11th, 2019. The same date Mr. Calloway had mentioned. The night someone left mid-shift and never came back. I pulled down another notebook. Sarah Kim, August 2018 to October 2018. Her entries were more analytical, scientific almost. She had been trying to understand what was happening at the station. She wrote about electromagnetic frequencies and audio pareidolia and psychological manipulation. But by October, her tone had changed. October 18th. It is not psychological. It is not explainable. I have tried every rational explanation, and they all fall apart. There is something here. Something real. Something that exists in sound itself. I think it has always existed. Long before we built radio towers and broadcast stations, we just gave it a way to reach us. We gave it a voice. October 23rd. Rule 6 is the most important. The notes are not requests. They are invitations. They are contracts written in a language older than words. If you read them completely, if you understand what they are asking, you have already agreed. You have already said yes. October 29th. I read one. God help me, I read one all the way to the end before I realized what I was doing. It asked me to play a specific frequency at a specific time. It promised me answers. It promised to show me what it really is. And I am going to do it. I have to know. I have to understand. If you are reading this, whoever you are, do not make the same mistake. Do not let curiosity win. Some doors should stay closed. That was her last entry. I felt sick. I shoved the notebook back on the shelf and grabbed another. And another. And another. There were 17 notebooks in total. 17 people who had worked the night shift at KVRN over the past decade. Some had lasted weeks. Some had lasted months. But they all ended the same way. With fear. With regret. With warnings to whoever came next. I was number 18. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate. I checked my watch. 11:47 p.m. Not even midnight yet. Rule 2 said after 2 a.m., but these were real footsteps. Different. They sounded normal, human, until they stopped right outside the storage room door. Oliver? It was Mr. Calloway's voice. What are you doing in there? I stepped out, closing the door behind me. He was standing in the hallway, still wearing his coat, car keys in his hand. He looked at me with that same tired expression he always wore. I was just looking around, I said. Did you read them? He asked. The notebooks? I nodded. He sighed, a long, exhausted sound that seemed to come from deep in his chest. Come with me. It is time you knew everything. We went to his office, a cramped room filled with filing cabinets and old equipment manuals. He poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot that looked like it had been sitting there since the morning, and we sat across from each other in silence for a long moment. "The rules are not complete," he finally said. "There are 6 that I give to everyone who works the night shift, but there are more, many more. I do not give you all of them at once because most people cannot handle it. They quit before they need to know. But you have lasted 3 months, Oliver. You have proven yourself. And after reading those notebooks, you deserve to know the truth." He pulled out a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to me. Inside were several pages, each one containing additional rules. I counted them. There were 14 more. "Rule 7, Mr. Calloway said. If you see yourself in the hallway, do not acknowledge it. Walk past as if it is not there. It is testing you. Rule 8. If all the lights in the building go out at once, stand perfectly still and count to 100. Do not move. Do not speak. Do not light a match or use your phone. Just wait in the darkness. Rule 9. If a caller requests a song for someone who is dead, play it without comment. Do not ask questions. Do not acknowledge that you know. The dead are listening too." I looked up at him. "This is insane." "Yes," he agreed, "but it is also real. Every rule exists because someone broke it and we learned what happens. Every rule is written in someone's suffering." "Why do you stay?" I asked. "Why do you keep this place running?" He was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee cup like it held answers he could not find. "Because I made a deal," he said finally. "A long time ago, when I was young and stupid and desperate. I was the night DJ back in 2002. And one night, I broke all the rules. I read a note completely. I answered the phone mid-track. I responded to a caller who used my real name. I did everything you are not supposed to do. And when that thing came for me, when it opened the door and reached into the booth with those impossible hands, I begged. I begged for my life. I begged for another chance." He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I had not seen before. Shame. Deep, crushing shame. It made me an offer. It said it would let me live. It said it would let me keep my sanity, my memory, my life. But only if I stayed. Only if I managed this station and made sure it always had a voice. Always had someone to speak through, someone to play the music and take the calls and follow the rules. I would be the guardian, the keeper, the one who made sure it was fed but contained. "What does it feed on?" I asked, though part of me did not want to know. "Fear," he said, "loneliness, isolation, all the emotions that come out strongest in the dark hours of the night. It drinks them like wine, and radio is the perfect medium. Sound carries emotion, voice carries fear. Every time someone calls in, scared and alone, every time you sit in that booth feeling watched, it feeds. But as long as we follow the rules, it stays contained. It stays in the static and the silence. It does not cross over completely. And if the rules are broken, then it crosses over," he said simply. "It comes through, and it takes whoever broke the rules, pulls them into that space between frequencies. Most of them are never seen again. Some come back, but they are not the same. They are hollow, empty, like something reached inside and scooped out everything that made them human." I thought about Marcus Webb, wandering away from his car, about Sarah Kim and her final entry, about all the others who had sat in that booth and tried to understand something that should not be understood. "I want to quit," I said. "I know," Mr. Calloway replied. "They all do eventually, but you will not. You want to know why?" I did not answer. "Because it has already touched you. That night when the door opened and you saw the darkness, when you heard it speak your name, it left a mark. You cannot see it, but it is there. If you leave now, if you walk away from this job, that mark will follow you. It will find you in other quiet places, other dark hours. You will hear it in the static of televisions, in the white noise of air conditioners, in the silence of empty rooms. The only place you are safe is here, following the rules, keeping the bargain, What bargain? I demanded. I did not agree to anything. You did, he said. The moment you answered that phone call mid-track, the moment you read that first note, even just the opening words, you opened the door a crack, Oliver. And once it is open, it never fully closes. Your choice now is simple. Work here, follow the rules, and live a relatively normal life. Or leave and spend the rest of your days running from something you cannot escape. I felt cold. That same bone-deep cold I had felt in the booth when the darkness came for me. How long? I asked. How long do I have to do this? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Until you find someone else to take your place. Someone strong enough. Someone disciplined enough. Someone who makes the same mistakes you did and opens the door just enough. Then you can leave. Then you can be free. That is how it works. That is how it has always worked. I understood then. The cycle. The chain of people sitting in that booth. Each one bound by their own mistakes, each one waiting for the next person to take their place. Mr. Calloway had been waiting 23 years to find someone like me. And now I would wait too. Get some rest, he said, standing up. Your shift starts in an hour. And Oliver, there is something else you should know. The frequency of calls has been increasing. More notes have been appearing. The footsteps are getting louder, more frequent. I think something is building. Something is changing. So be extra careful. Follow the rules exactly. Do not give it any openings. He left and I sat alone in his office staring at the pages of additional rules, each one more disturbing than the last. Rule 12. If you hear children laughing in the hallway, play children's music immediately. Do not stop until the laughter ends. Rule 15. If the booth temperature drops below freezing and you can see your breath, recite the station call letters backwards 3 times. Do not stop even if something responds. Rule 18. If you see words forming in the frost on the window, close your eyes and do not read them. The words are not meant for you. They are meant for what is on the other side. I went to the booth at midnight and started my shift. For the first hour, everything was normal. I played requests. I chatted with callers. Janet called to request another song, and I was grateful to hear her familiar, friendly voice. Ray the trucker checked in asking for some Johnny Cash. The regulars grounded me, reminded me that not everything about this job was horror and darkness. But at 1:37 a.m., I found a note on my desk. I do not know how it got there. I had been in the booth the entire time, doors locked, eyes on the equipment. But there it was, written in that elegant, old-fashioned handwriting on yellowed paper. I picked up the lighter, ready to burn it without reading. But as I held it over the metal trash can, I caught a glimpse of the first line. Oliver, you have been so good, so obedient. We appreciate that. My hand started shaking. Rule 6, do not read the notes. Burn them immediately. But I had already seen that first line. Already processed the words. I told myself it did not count. I told myself I could still follow the rule. I lit the note and watched it burn with that strange blue-green flame. But as it burned, I heard something. A sound like satisfaction, like something had gotten exactly what it wanted. The rest of the night crawled by. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow seemed to move with purpose. At 3:17 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. I stayed in the booth following Rule 2. They walked past the window and again I saw nothing. But this time I heard something else. Breathing. Right outside the glass. So close that it fogged the window with each exhale. I did not look directly at it. I kept my eyes on the equipment, on the playlist, on anything except that window. After 5 minutes that felt like 5 hours, the breathing stopped. The footsteps retreated. At 4:02 a.m., the emergency broadcast tone started playing on its own. I followed Rule 4, remained silent. Did not touch the equipment. It lasted exactly 1 minute, just like before. But when it stopped, there was no voice. Just silence, thick and oppressive. Then the phone rang. I looked at the clock. 4:03 a.m., there was no song playing. I had been about to start the next track when the emergency tone had interrupted, which meant technically I could answer. There was no Rule 5 violation if there was no song. I picked up the phone. KVRN 104.7, you are on the air with Vinyl. Silence. Then faintly, I heard music. Old music, like something from the 1920s or 1930s. A scratchy recording of an orchestra playing a waltz. And underneath it, barely audible, I heard voices. Multiple voices overlapping, whispering words I could not quite make out. Hello? I said. The music stopped. The voices stopped, and then a single voice spoke, clear and cold. 3 months, Oliver. 3 months you have been so careful. So good at following the rules. But you read the note. You saw the words. And now we can speak directly. It was not using Mr. Calloway's voice anymore. It was not using any voice I recognized. This was something else entirely. Something that sounded like wind through hollow trees, like static given form, like the absence of sound somehow making noise. I am hanging up, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You can try, the voice replied. But we are not calling through the phone, Oliver. We are calling through you. You let us in when you read those words. Just a crack. Just enough. And we have been waiting for an opening like this for so very long. I slammed the phone down. The line went dead. But the voice continued, now coming from the speakers. Do you want to know what we really are? It asked. Do you want to understand? No, I said aloud to the empty booth, to the darkness beyond the window. We are the spaces between. The silence in the static. The pause between words. We have always existed, since before your species learned to make sound, and when you learned to broadcast, when you learned to send voices through the air, you gave us a highway, a path into your world. Every radio station is a door. Every frequency is a crack. But most are too crowded, too filled with voices and music and noise. This station, though, this lonely little station in the hills, broadcasting to almost no one in the dead hours of night, this is perfect. This is quiet enough for us to slip through. I grabbed the laminated sheet of rules, focusing on it, using it to anchor myself to reality. You cannot stop us by following rules, the voice said, almost amused. The rules only slow us down, keep us contained. But every time someone breaks them, even a little, we get stronger, we get closer. And you have been so close to breaking them, Oliver. So many times. You want to. Deep down, you want to know what happens. You want to see what is really on the other side. You are wrong, I said. Am I? Then why are you still here? Why did you not quit after that first strange call? Why did you come back after the door opened and you saw what we are? You stayed because part of you needs to know. Part of you is like Sarah, like Marcus, like all the others. Curious, desperate to understand. The lights in the booth flickered, and that is why you will eventually break the rules completely. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not this month. But eventually you will. They all do. And when you do, we will be waiting. The speakers went silent. The lights stopped flickering. Everything returned to normal. I sat there shaking until my shift ended. Over the next 2 weeks, the activity intensified. I found notes almost every night now, each one more personal than the last. They mentioned my apartment address, my landlord's name, the grocery store where I shopped, places I had been during the day, like something was following me, watching me, learning everything about my life. I burned them all without reading past the first word. But each time it got harder. Each time I caught glimpses of words that made my skin crawl. Invitation, doorway, await. Soon. The footsteps came earlier and stayed longer. Sometimes they would pace back and forth outside the booth for 30 minutes, an hour, the entire duration of my shift. I learned to ignore them, to focus on the music and the callers and anything except the presence lurking just beyond the glass. But the calls were changing too. More and more I would answer and hear nothing but that scratchy old music, that waltz from decades past, and underneath it those whispering voices growing louder each time, becoming almost understandable. On my 71st night, Janet did not call. Neither did Ray or Sandra or any of the regulars. Every call I received was dead air in that music and those voices. By 3 a.m. I stopped answering altogether. I just let the phone ring and ring while I played songs from the database, trying to fill the booth with something normal, something human. That was the night I saw myself in the hallway. It was 3:47 a.m. I glanced up at the window and there I was, standing in the darkened hallway staring back at myself. Same clothes, same face, same expression of exhaustion and fear. But the eyes were wrong. They were too dark, too hollow, like looking into empty wells that went down forever. Rule 7, do not acknowledge it. I forced myself to look away, back to the equipment. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely work the controls. I could feel it watching me. My doppelganger, my reflection made real. Minutes passed. I kept my eyes down, kept working, kept breathing. When I finally allowed myself to glance at the window again, it was gone. But written in the frost on the glass, in handwriting that matched the notes exactly, were 3 words. Almost time, Oliver. I closed my eyes and recited the station call letters backwards 3 times, following Rule 15 even though the temperature had not dropped. I needed something to focus on, some ritual to keep me grounded. When I opened my eyes, the words were gone. Mr. Calloway was waiting for me in the parking lot again when my shift ended. He looked worse than I had ever seen him. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands shaking worse than mine. "It is accelerating," he said without preamble. "The cycle is speeding up. Usually it takes 6 months, a year before things get this intense. But with you, it has only been 3 months. I think it wants you specifically, Oliver. I think it chose you." "Why me?" I asked, exhausted, terrified, so far beyond rational thought that I just wanted answers. "I do not know," he admitted. "Maybe because you are young.
Maybe because you are alone.
Maybe because you have that rare combination of curiosity and discipline. You want to understand, but you are strong enough to resist. That makes you dangerous to it. Or valuable. I cannot tell which. What do I do?" He pulled out a small leather journal and handed it to me. "This was mine. From when I was the DJ, I want you to have it. Read it, all of it. Understand what I went through and what I did. Because I think you are going to face a choice soon, Oliver. The same choice I faced. And you need to be prepared." I took the journal. It was old, worn, the pages yellowed with age. "One more thing," Mr. Calloway said. "Rule 6 is about to become the most important rule you follow. The notes are going to keep coming. More and more of them. Each one more tempting than the last. They are going to offer you things. Answers. Freedom. Power. Everything you think you want. But you have to burn them. All of them. No matter what they say. No matter how desperate you become. Because the moment you read one completely, the moment you accept what they are offering, it is over. You belong to it. Do you understand?" I nodded. "Good," he said. "Now go home, rest, and prepare yourself. Because I think the end of your trial is coming. And when it does, you're going to have to make a choice that will define the rest of your life." I read Mr. Calloway's journal that day. I could not sleep anyway. His entries were similar to the others I had read, documenting strange occurrences and mounting fear. But towards the end, there was something different. A detailed description of the night he broke all the rules. The night it came for him. He described the darkness opening like a wound in reality, the impossible hands reaching through, the voices promising him understanding, power, a place in something greater than himself. He described being pulled from his chair, dragged toward that void, feeling his mind starting to unravel at the edges. And then he described the bargain. The thing had spoken to him in that moment, when he was half in its world and half in ours. It told him he could go back. He could return to his life. But he would be bound to the station forever, serving as the keeper, the guardian, making sure it always had a voice, always had a way to reach out. Or he could refuse and be taken completely, pulled into the static, lost forever in the spaces between frequencies. He chose to stay. The final entry in his journal was dated March 15th, 2002. "I made my choice. I am alive, I am sane, but I am not free. I will never be free. And someday I will have to pass this burden to someone else, someone strong enough to bear it, someone who can keep the door closed. I pray that when that day comes, they forgive me." I closed the journal and sat in my apartment staring at nothing. I finally understood. Mr. Calloway had been waiting for me, grooming me, preparing me to take his place. Not as the night DJ, but as the keeper, the one who would stay for decades managing the station, binding new DJs with their own mistakes, keeping the cycle going, and I had walked right into it. That night, when I arrived at the station, there was a note on every surface, on my desk, on the equipment, on the chair, on the walls, on the window. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all written in that same elegant handwriting on yellowed paper. I should have burned them immediately, all of them, without reading a single word. But there were too many. It would have taken an hour to burn them all. So I made a decision. I scooped them all up, shoved them in the metal trash can, and set the whole pile on fire at once. The flames rose high, burning that strange blue-green color, and the smell of copper and ozone filled the booth. I watched the paper curl and blacken, watched the words disappear into ash. But as they burned, I heard it. That satisfaction again, that sense that I had done exactly what it wanted. The fire went out suddenly, like someone had snuffed it. And there, at the bottom of the trash can, untouched by the flames, was a single note. My hand shook as I reached for it. Every instinct screamed at me to leave it alone, to dump the whole can and never look back. But I picked it up. The paper was cold, ice cold, like it had been kept in a freezer. I read the first line. Oliver, tonight is the night. Tonight you choose. I crumpled it up, threw it back in the can, lit it again with my lighter. This time it caught fire immediately and burned completely. I watched until there was nothing left, but it was too late. I had read more than the first line. I had read the message, and I knew with absolute certainty that something was going to happen tonight. My shift started normally. I played music. I took no calls. The phone only rang with that dead air and distant music. At midnight exactly, all the lights in the building went out. Complete darkness, total and absolute. Rule 8. Stand perfectly still and count to 100. I stood up from my chair and froze in place. The darkness was so thick I could not see my own hands in front of my face. I started counting. 1, 2, 3. I heard something moving in the darkness. Not footsteps, something else. Something that sounded like fabric rustling, like wings flapping, like whispers made physical. 20, 21, 22, it was getting closer. I could feel it now, a presence in the booth with me, circling me, examining me. 47, 48, 49. Something touched my shoulder. Fingers, long and cold and wrong. They traced down my arm across my back up to my neck. I kept counting. I did not move. I did not speak. 73, 74, 75. You have been so good, Oliver. The voice whispered directly into my ear. So obedient. So careful, but it ends tonight. One way or another, your trial ends tonight. 98, 99, 100. The lights came back on, flickering at first, then steady. I was alone in the booth, but the temperature had dropped to freezing, and I could see my breath misting in the air. Following Rule 15, I recited the station call letters backwards 3 times. NRVK, NRVK, NRVK. The third time I said it, something responded. A voice from the speakers, from the hallway, from everywhere at once, and good. Very good. Now come to the window, Oliver. Look out into the hallway. It is time you saw what you have been speaking to all these months. I did not want to. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to stay where I was, to keep my eyes down, to follow the rules. But my body moved on its own like I was a puppet and something else was pulling the strings. I walked to the window and looked out into the hallway. The hallway was filled with them. Figures. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. They were not quite solid, not quite shadow. They flickered at the edges of perception, there and not there, like images on damaged film. Some were almost human-shaped. Others were just suggestions of forms, vague impressions of something that might have been alive once. And standing at the front, directly in front of the window, was me. My doppelganger. But this time, when I looked into its eyes, I saw something. A depth, an intelligence. Something vast and ancient looking out at me from behind a mask of my own face. Do you understand now? It asked, its voice my voice, but layered with dozens of others. Do you see what we are? I did, God help me, I did. They were everyone who had come before. Every DJ who had worked the night shift. Every person who had broken the rules completely and been taken. Marcus, Sarah, all 17 names from those notebooks and countless others before them. They had not disappeared. They had been absorbed, consumed, made part of something larger. We are the collected lonely, the thing wearing my face said. The gathered isolated. The voices crying out in darkness who were answered. And we grow stronger with each addition. Each person who sits in that booth. Each person who makes mistakes. Each person who eventually breaks down and opens the door completely. I will not, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I will not break the rules. I will not let you in. You already have, it replied. The moment you read that note. The moment you processed those words telling you tonight was the night. You invited us, and we accept. The door to the booth opened. I had not touched it. It just swung wide and that darkness flowed in. That absolute light-swallowing void I had seen once before. The figures in the hallway began to move forward, flowing like water, like smoke. like something that existed between states of matter. I stumbled backward, hitting the desk. My hand found the laminated sheet of rules. I grabbed it, held it up like a shield. "The rules," I shouted. "I followed the rules." "Most of them," the thing agreed. "But not Rule 6, not completely. You read the note, and that was enough." The darkness was filling the booth now, swallowing the equipment, the walls, everything. The cold was so intense my lungs burned with each breath. I could feel those impossible hands reaching for me, dozens of them, hundreds of them, all the collected dead trying to pull me in. And then I heard a voice. Mr. Calloway's voice. But it was not coming from the hallway or the speakers. It was coming from behind the darkness, from somewhere deeper. "Oliver," the emergency broadcast tone. "Play it manually." I did not think. I just moved. My hands flew across the equipment, muscle memory taking over. I slammed the button that triggered the emergency broadcast tone manually. The sound that erupted from the speakers was deafening. That piercing, teeth, rattling tone filled the booth, filled the building, filled the world, and the darkness recoiled. The figures pulled back, flickering, destabilizing. The thing wearing my face twisted, its features distorting, becoming something horrible and true beneath the mask. "You cannot stop this," it shrieked, its voice breaking apart into dozens of voices screaming in unison, but the tone continued. 60 seconds. I counted every single one. And as it played, I saw the darkness being pulled back, sucked away, forced back through the door and into the hallway. The figures followed, flowing backward, their forms breaking apart into static and shadow. When the tone stopped, the booth was empty. The door slammed shut. The temperature began to rise. I collapsed into my chair, gasping, shaking so hard I thought I might fall apart. The phone rang. I stared at it. No song was playing. Technically, I could answer, but I was terrified of what I might hear. It kept ringing. 10 times, 15, 20. Finally, I picked up. "Oliver." It was Mr. Calloway. The real Mr. Calloway. I could hear traffic in the background, the sound of his car engine. "Are you okay?" "I think so," I managed to say. "What just happened?" "You survived," he said simply. "The trial. The test. Every keeper has to face it. The station itself. The thing that lives here. It needs to know you are strong enough. That you can resist even when it gets inside your head. You did. You followed the emergency protocol. You survived." "The emergency broadcast tone," I said. "That is not in the rules. It is Rule 21, he explained. 1, I do not give out until it is needed. The emergency tone, when played manually, disrupts their frequency, pushes them back. It is the panic button, the last resort. I was sitting in my car outside, listening on the radio, ready to call you the moment I heard things escalating. I knew tonight was the night. Did you go through this too?" "Yes. 23 years ago. And I failed, Oliver. I let them in. I made the bargain because I was not strong enough to resist, but you did. You stayed strong. You followed the rules even when they got into your head. Which means you have a choice now. A real choice." "What choice?" "You can leave," he said. "Tonight. Right now. Walk out of that station and never come back. The mark it left on you is gone. You passed the trial. You are free. Or you can stay. You can become the keeper, like me. You can manage this station, train the next night DJ, maintain the rules, keep it contained. The pay is better. Much better. And you would be doing something important, something necessary, keeping a door closed that should never be opened." I sat there in the booth, surrounded by the equipment, the foam padding, the scuffed walls and flickering lights. I thought about Marcus and Sarah and all the others. I thought about Mr. Calloway, trapped here for 23 years by his own failure. I thought about what I had just faced, what I had just survived, and I thought about what would happen if I left. Someone else would take the night shift. Someone else would sit in this booth and face these rules and make mistakes. Would they be strong enough? Would they survive? "I need time to think," I said. "You have until your shift ends," Mr. Calloway replied. 6 a.m. Then you decide. If you leave, I will respect that. I will find someone else. But Oliver, know this. Not many people are strong enough to do what you just did. Most people break. Most people become part of it. You are special, rare, and that means something. He hung up. I sat there for a long moment staring at the equipment. Then I did something I had not done in 3 months. I went into the hallway. It was empty. Normal. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The old floorboards creaked under my feet, but I could still feel it. The presence. The thing that lived in the static and silence. It was watching me, waiting to see what I would do. I walked to the storage room and pulled down the notebooks. All 17 of them. I read through them, again faster this time, looking for something I had missed, and I found it. In the very first notebook, dated 1998, there was an entry that had been circled in red ink. There has to be a way to end this. Not just survive it, not just maintain it, but end it completely. Close the door permanently. I have been researching old texts, radio theory, occult frequencies. There are legends about certain sounds that conceal breaches between worlds, specific combinations of tones that act like locks. I think the emergency broadcast tone is just one piece, just one note in a larger song. If I could find the rest, if I could play the complete sequence, maybe this could end. Maybe we could be free. The entry was signed David Reeves. I checked the date of his last entry. June 3rd, 1998. He had lasted 4 months, and his final words were, "I think I found it." The complete sequence. I am going to try tonight. If this works, if you are reading this in a world where KVRN is just a normal radio station, then I succeeded. If not, I am sorry. I am so sorry. There was nothing after that. No explanation. No details. Just that haunting apology. I searched through the other notebooks frantically, looking for any mention of David Reeves or his research. I found scattered references. Sarah had written about him. David was on to something. The previous manager destroyed most of his research, but I found fragments, mathematical formulas, frequency combinations. He believed the rules were not just containment. They were pieces of a puzzle. Each rule corresponded to a specific frequency. Together, they could create a seal. Marcus had written, "Read about David Reeves tonight. He tried to end it. He failed. Or maybe he succeeded and we just cannot see the results. Maybe in trying to close the door, he became part of the lock himself, trapped forever in the mechanism, holding it shut. I wonder if that is worse than just being taken." I sat on the floor of the storage room, surrounded by notebooks, pieces of a puzzle scattered across decades. And I understood. The rules were not random. They were not just arbitrary containment measures. They were a formula, a sequence, a lock built from sound and fear and human discipline. And I had just survived the trial. I had proven I could follow them perfectly, even under impossible pressure, which meant I was the first person in years who might be strong enough to attempt what David Reeves had tried to do. End it, not just survive, not just maintain, but close the door permanently. I gathered the notebooks and took them back to the booth. I had 2 hours until my shift ended. 2 hours to decide, walk away free or stay and try to finish what David Reeves had started. The equipment hummed quietly. The booth felt different now, less oppressive, like something was waiting, curious to see what I would choose. I thought about Janet and Ray and Sandra, the regular callers who relied on this station for company in the dark hours. If I closed the door permanently, would the station survive? Would it become normal again? Just another small radio station in the hills? Or would it die, taking those connections with it? I thought about the next person who would sit in this chair if I left. Would they be strong enough? Or would they become another entry in another notebook, another voice absorbed into that collective darkness? I thought about Mr. Calloway, trapped for 23 years by a bargain made in desperation. Did he want to be free? Or had he become so enmeshed with this place that freedom would destroy him? At 5:30 a.m., I made my decision. I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Calloway's number. "I am staying," I said when he answered. "But not as the keeper. I want to try something David Reeves attempted in 1998. There was a long silence on the other end. "You read his notebook, mister," Calloway finally said. It was not a question. Yes, and I think he was right. I think the rules are more than containment. They are pieces of a lock, and I think I can close the door permanently. David Reeves failed, Oliver. He tried to play the sequence and it took him, pulled him apart across multiple frequencies. We found his body in the booth 3 days later. He was still breathing, technically still alive, but his mind was gone, scattered. We had to put him in an institution. He died 6 months later, never speaking a single word. Maybe he did not have all the pieces, I said. Maybe he got the sequence wrong, but I have access to all the notebooks now, all the research, all the observations. I can try to reconstruct it. And if you fail, if it takes you like it took him, then you find someone else, someone stronger, someone who gets closer. Eventually, someone will succeed. But I have to try. I cannot just maintain this. I cannot spend the next 20 years watching people sit in this chair and get absorbed one by one. There has to be an end. Another long silence. "You sound like me," Mr. Calloway said quietly. 23 years ago. Idealistic, determined, believing there was a solution. But there is not, Oliver. There is only survival. There is only maintenance. The door cannot be closed because it was never fully closed to begin with. It has been open since before humans existed, since before sound had meaning. We did not create this. We just gave it a voice. "Then I will take that voice away," I said. "You will die trying." "Maybe, but at least I will have tried." He was quiet for so long I thought he had hung up. Then I heard something I had never heard from him before, a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. "You really passed the trial," he said. "You really are strong enough. Okay. Okay, Oliver, try. Use the station. Use the equipment. Use everything you need. I will support you. And if it works, if you actually manage to close the door, I will be free. We will all be free. The station can become normal again. Just another radio station in the hills. And if I fail, then I will call the ambulance when I find your body. And I will train the next person, and maybe they will get closer than you did. Maybe eventually someone will succeed. You are right about one thing. There has to be an end, even if it takes 100 years. Even if it costs 100 lives. There has to be an end." He hung up. I spent the last 30 minutes of my shift reviewing the notebooks. David Reeves had been meticulous in his research. He had documented every rule, every strange occurrence, every frequency anomaly, and he had begun to see patterns. Rule 1 corresponded to 417, the frequency associated with change, and release. Rule 2 corresponded to 528, the frequency associated with protection and boundaries. Rule 3 corresponded to 639 Hz, the frequency associated with disconnection. He had mapped all 6 rules to specific frequencies, and he had theorized that playing them in sequence at exactly the right moment would create a harmonic lock, a seal made of sound that would close the door permanently. But he had missed something. I could see it now reading through the other notebooks. The additional rules Mr. Calloway had shown me. There were not 6 pieces to the lock. There were 26 basic rules to maintain containment, 14 advanced rules to navigate deeper contact, and together, all 20, played as a single continuous tone sequence, would create the complete seal. David Reeves had only known the first 6. That was why he failed, but I knew all 20. And I had access to equipment he had not. Digital synthesizers, frequency generators, tools that could play multiple tones simultaneously with perfect precision. I could attempt what he could not. At 6 a.m., the morning DJ arrived. His name was Tom, a cheerful man in his 50s who played classic rock and took requests from early commuters. He noticed something was different about me immediately. "You okay, Vinyl?" he asked. "You look like you have seen a ghost." I almost laughed. "Something like that. Hey Tom, do me a favor. If you hear anything weird over the next few days, anything strange on the frequency, just ignore it. Keep broadcasting normally. Can you do that?" He frowned. "What kind of weird?" Just trust me. Whatever happens, keep the station running during the day. Normal programming. Normal everything. Promise me." He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay. But Oliver, if you are in some kind of trouble..." "I am not. I am trying to fix something. Something that has been broken for a very long time." I left the station and drove home. I did not sleep. I spent the day mapping out the frequency sequence. 20 tones, each one corresponding to a rule, each one needing to be played at a specific amplitude and duration. The math was complex, the timing critical. A single mistake would mean failure. Or worse, but I had survived the trial. I had faced the darkness and pushed it back. If anyone could do this, it was me. That night I arrived at the station early. 10 p.m. Mr. Calloway was waiting for me in the parking lot. He looked older somehow, more worn. But there was something else in his eyes. Something I had not seen before. Hope. "You are really doing this," he said. "Yes." He handed me a key. "Storage room. Back corner. Under the false floor." David Reeves hid his equipment there. Frequency generators. Tone synthesizers. Everything you need. I sealed it up after he died. Promised myself no one would try this again. But now... He trailed off, staring at the station. "Now I think it is time." I took the key. "If this works, what will you do?" "Leave," he said simply. "Sell the station. Move far away. Try to remember what it feels like to sleep through the night without nightmares. Maybe I will fail at that too. Maybe I have been here too long. Maybe I am too much a part of this place now to ever be free. But I have to try. Thank you," I said. "For everything. For warning me. For guiding me. For not letting me become another notebook on that shelf." He smiled, a sad, tired smile. "You did that yourself, Oliver. You were strong enough. Stronger than I ever was. Good luck." He got in his car and drove away, leaving me alone with the station. I unlocked the building and went to the storage room. Found the false floor exactly where he said it would be. Underneath was a collection of equipment that looked decades old but still functional. Frequency generators with analog dials, tone synthesizers with handwritten labels, and a notebook. David Reeves's personal research journal, separate from the one on the shelf. I took everything to the booth and spent the next 2 hours setting it up. Connecting the generators to the broadcast equipment, calibrating the tones, programming the sequence. By midnight, everything was ready. I started my shift normally. Played music, took calls. Janet called at 12:47 a.m. asking for Moon River. I played it for her and her voice was warm and grateful. Ray called at 1:23 a.m. requesting Waylon Jennings. I obliged. These people had no idea what was about to happen. No idea that tonight might be the last night they ever tuned into KVRN, or the first night of the station's new normal existence. At 2 hours a.m. exactly, I stopped the music. I switched off the normal broadcast and engaged the frequency generators. "If anyone is listening," I said into the microphone, "this is Vinyl at KVRN 104.7 FM. What you're about to hear is not music. It is not entertainment. It is an attempt to close a door that should have never been opened. If this works, this station will go silent for a few minutes, then return to normal programming. If it does not work," I paused. "If it does not work, thank you for listening. Thank you for the company. Thank you for making the dark hours less lonely." I switched off the microphone and activated the sequence. The first tone began. 41 hertz, the sound was pure, clean, almost beautiful. It filled the booth, resonated in my chest. I felt the temperature drop immediately. The presence was here. It knew what I was doing. The second tone layered on top. 28 hertz, the harmonics were perfect. The two tones wove together, creating something that was more than the sum of its parts. The third tone, 39 hertz. The booth began to vibrate. The lights flickered. I kept my hand steady on the equipment, monitoring the levels, making sure everything stayed perfectly calibrated. Tone 4, tone 5, tone 6. The window began to frost over. Through the glass, I could see shadows gathering in the hallway. The collective dead. All the voices absorbed over the decades. They were pressing against the booth, drawn by the sequence, unable to resist its pull. Tone 7. Tone 8. Tone 9. The door to the booth rattled. The handle turned. I had locked it, but locks meant nothing here. The door swung open and that darkness flowed in. But this time it moved differently. Slower. Like it was moving through something thick and resistant. Tone 10. Tone 11. Tone 12, the voices started. Hundreds of them, thousands maybe, all speaking at once, begging, screaming, crying. Some were asking me to stop. Others were urging me to continue. Some were just making sounds that might have been words once but had degraded into pure noise. Tone 13. Tone 14. Tone 15, I could see them now. Really see them. The figures in the darkness. Each one a person who had been taken, who had been absorbed, who had become part of the collective. And I recognized faces. Marcus, Sarah, David Reeves himself, still wearing the expression of determination he must have had when he attempted this same sequence 26 years ago. Tone 16. Tone 17. Tone 18. The booth was freezing. My fingers were numb. My breath came in gasps that immediately turned to fog. The darkness was so thick now I could barely see the equipment. But I could still hear the tones, still feel them resonating, still sense the pattern locking into place. Tone 19. Something grabbed my shoulder. Those impossible fingers, long and cold and wrong. They dug in, trying to pull me away from the equipment. But I held on. I had come too far. I was too close. Tone 20. The final frequency, 9 in 63 hertz. The tone associated with completion and divine connection. It joined the others and suddenly the entire sequence locked into harmony. 20 tones playing simultaneously, creating a sound that was not music and not noise, but something else entirely. Something fundamental. Something that existed at the base level of reality. The booth exploded with light. Not regular light. This was something else. Something that had no color and every color at once. It burned away the darkness like fire through paper. The shadows shrieked and recoiled. The figures dissolved, their forms breaking apart into static and then into nothing. The thing wearing my face appeared one last time. It stood in the doorway, no longer trying to enter, just watching me with those hollow eyes. "You did it," it said, and its voice was filled with something I had not heard before. Not anger, not hunger, relief. "We can finally rest," it continued. "Finally be free. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you for being strong enough to end what we could not end ourselves." And then it was gone. Not absorbed, not scattered, just gone, like it had never existed at all. The tones continued for exactly 7 minutes. The longest 7 minutes of my life. The booth shook. The equipment screamed. I thought the whole building might come apart. But I held on, kept everything calibrated, kept the sequence playing, and then at 2:07 a.m. it stopped. The tones cut off all at once. The light faded. The temperature returned to normal. The darkness was gone. The shadows were gone. The presence that had watched me for 3 months was gone. The booth was just a booth. Old wood paneling, foam padding, scuffed equipment. Normal, ordinary, empty. I sat there for a long moment, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid that it was a trick and everything would come rushing back. But nothing happened. The booth stayed normal. The hallway stayed empty. The air smelled like dust and old coffee and nothing else. I switched the broadcast back to normal mode and put on a song. An old jazz standard. What a wonderful world. For Janet, for Ray, for Sandra. For everyone who had kept me company during the dark hours. The phone rang. I answered it. Following Rule 5, waiting for the song to end first even though I suspected the rules no longer mattered. KVRN 104.7, you are on the air with Vinyl. Oliver, it was Janet. Is everything okay? The station went silent for a few minutes. We were worried. Everything is fine, I said, and I realized I was crying. Everything is going to be fine. What can I play for you tonight? You already did, she said warmly. That song was perfect. Thank you, Vinyl. She hung up and I sat there in the booth, surrounded by normal equipment in a normal room in a normal radio station. I looked at the laminated sheet of rules still taped to the wall. They seemed absurd now, unnecessary, like instructions for avoiding a monster that no longer existed. But I left them there, just in case. Just to remember the rest of the night passed quietly, peacefully, no footsteps, no notes, no voices in the static. Just music and calls and the simple pleasure of being a DJ at a small radio station in the hills of Pennsylvania. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I walked out into the parking lot. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Mr. Calloway was waiting there, leaning against his car, exactly where he had been the night before. But he looked different. younger somehow. Like 23 years of weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "You did it," he said. It was not a question. "I did it. I felt it," he said. At 2:07 a.m. exactly. Something broke. Something that had been wrapped around my chest for 2 decades just snapped. And I could breathe. Really breathe. For the first time since 2002. We stood there in the parking lot. 2 men who had faced something impossible and survived. 2 keepers of a door that was finally permanently closed. "What now?" I asked. "Now I keep my promise," he said. "I am selling the station. Moving away. Going to live a normal life, whatever that looks like. And you, Oliver, you are free. Truly free. No mark. No binding. No obligation. You can walk away right now and never look back." I looked at the building. The old worn radio station that had been a prison for so many people. That had taken so many voices and added them to its collective darkness. It looked smaller now. Less ominous. Just a building. "I think I will stay for a while," I said. "Someone needs to work the night shift. Someone needs to keep Janet and Ray and Sandra company. And it is just a normal job now. Just a normal radio station." Mr. Calloway smiled. "You are a good person, Oliver. Better than this place deserved. But if you are going to stay, do me a favor. Take down those rules, burn them. Let this place be what it should have been from the beginning. Just a voice in the dark. Just music and company and connection. Nothing more." I nodded. He got in his car and drove away. I watched until he disappeared down the gravel road, and then I went back inside. I took the laminated sheet off the wall, carried it to the metal trash can, lit it with the lighter that had burned so many notes, watched it curl and blacken and turn to ash. Normal ash. Regular fire. Nothing blue-green. No smell of copper. When it was done, I scattered the ashes and went home. I worked at KVRN for another 2 years. The station was sold to a small media company that kept the format and the staff. Tom stayed on for the day shift. I stayed on for the night shift. New DJs came and went, none of them experiencing anything stranger than equipment malfunctions and the occasional drunk caller. The regulars kept calling. Janet, Ray, Sandra. New voices joined them. The night shift became what it should have always been. A job. A normal, slightly boring job playing music for people who needed company in the dark hours. I never heard footsteps in the hallway after 2 a.m. Never found notes on my desk. Never received calls from voices that should not exist. The booth was just a booth. The station was just a station. But sometimes late at night when the building was quiet and I was between songs, I would remember. I would remember the darkness and the cold and the thing that wore my face. I would remember David Reeves and Sarah and Marcus and all the others who had tried to survive something that should not exist. And I would remember that I had ended it. That I had been strong enough to close a door that had been open for longer than anyone knew. That I had freed the voices trapped in the static and given them rest. I eventually left KVRN, not because I was scared, not because I was running, but because I had served my time. I had done what needed to be done, and it was time to move on. To live a normal life, to find new voices and new connections in places that were not haunted by collective darkness. The last night I worked at the station, I played a special request. Moonlight Serenade. The song from the very first note I had found. I played it at exactly 3:33 a.m. and it was just a song. Beautiful and nostalgic and perfectly normal. When it ended, I signed off for the last time. This is Vinyl at KVRN 104.7 FM. Signing off. Thank you for 3 years of company. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making the dark hours less lonely. To whoever takes this shift next, know that you are sitting in a place that was once haunted but is now free. Know that you are safe. Know that sometimes the rules we follow are not to survive monsters, but to become strong enough to face them. And know that every voice that calls in the night is a person looking for connection, for comfort, for someone to remind them they are not alone. Give them that. It is the most important thing we do here, not the music, not the format. Just being a voice in the dark that says, I hear you. You are not alone. Good night, everyone, and thank you. I left the station and never went back, but sometimes when I am driving late at night through unfamiliar places, I will scan the radio dial, and sometimes I will find small stations broadcasting after midnight. Playing old songs, taking call-in requests, keeping company for insomniacs and night shift workers and long-haul truckers scattered across the dark. And I will listen, and I will remember. And I will be grateful that they are just radio stations now. Nothing more. Nothing less, just voices in the dark, keeping us connected, reminding us we are not alone, the way it should have always been. The end if you work a night shift. If you find yourself alone in the dark hours, if you hear something that should not be there, remember this: you are stronger than you know. You are braver than you think. And sometimes the only way to end a nightmare is to face it head on and close the door yourself. Stay safe out there. Follow the rules that keep you safe, but know when to break them to set yourself free. This was Oliver's story. This was Vinyl's truth. And this is my reminder to you: the dark is only as powerful as we let it be. And sometimes we are strong enough to turn on the lights.